When people first saw flying saucers, questions arose about whether this was carefully concealed information. Do flying saucers and aliens really exist? Are UFOs truly attacking Russian airplanes, or is there a more natural explanation for this? That evening, strange movements were observed over the mountains. Some wondered if it was a hoax, as such photographs are very easy to fake. Are aliens abducting people? For many, everything happening seemed too real. Could they have sent a signal dispatched by extraterrestrial life forms? Are they watching us? Based on these questions, one could begin to believe in something greater. In June 1947, in the state of Washington, a frightened amateur pilot witnessed a strange flying object near Mount Rainier. This object, spinning and swirling, moved faster than any known aircraft. The astonished pilot, Kenneth Arnold, landed, and his sighting marked the beginning of a new era. News spread quickly, and the press began to call them flying saucers. Reports continued to increase. Military generals began to fear a possible invasion from space. In real life, commanders were afraid of the onset of a world war, and they were terrified by the panic. At that time, in Tokunawa, they recalled the chaos caused by a staging that had occurred back in 1938. Producer Orson Welles later apologized, surprised at how a story from children's comics could have such a strong impact on radio listeners. The military had no answers to questions about the flying saucers that had appeared in Europe in the last months of World War II. Night fighter pilots dubbed them mysterious pilots. One of them recalls, "We saw them somewhere in 1944 in November or December. These fireballs, appearing in sight, immediately vanished." Another pilot describes, "The object I saw looked like a mass of white light. Many reported a red light, others saw green lights. We tried to pursue them, but no one managed to catch them." He adds, "I flew a British Mosquito fighter, which could reach speeds of up to 840 kilometers per hour, and we tried to catch up with them several times, but we couldn't even get close." The investigation reached a dead end. These objects could have simply been products of imagination or hallucinations, but they could also have extraterrestrial origins or be secret weapons of the Germans. However, for the following 50 years, no one saw anything that could change the opinion that they were unidentified flying objects. The mysterious fighters disappeared with the end of the war, but UFOs continued to appear in other places. Life after the war in America seemed calm, but national security agencies remained on alert. The United States was under aerial surveillance by the Soviet Union, and questions arose about whether Big Brother could establish this surveillance. The greatest concern was caused by UFOs appearing near military strategic sites, as the nuclear secrets of the country were at stake. There was a threat of nuclear war beginning, and Soviet spies could be anywhere. Anyone could be an alien. "They look just like us," people pondered. Reports of UFO sightings and footage taken by rare witnesses did not make it to the police or to scientists. Instead, they were collected in the Research Bureau of the Air Force for 22 years. Researchers set two main objectives, as described in the head of the Blue Book project. First, they sought to determine whether unidentified flying objects posed a threat to the security of the United States. Second, they wanted access to the latest technologies that would help advance the science and industry of the country. In 1969, these files were closed. The conclusion of the representatives of the Air Force indicated a lack of threat and insufficient information. They investigated 3,200 reports of strange flying objects, each of which was classified and assessed for credibility. In 20% of these cases, the objects were classified as UFOs. At the same time, 10% of the information obtained was deemed unreliable. Research showed that the better the object was visible, the more often it could be classified as unidentified. Ultimately, the commander of the Air Force stated that based on the collected information, it could be concluded that no objects known as flying saucers had been observed over the territory of the United States. Among those who believe in aliens, Many wait for their sign, while skeptics demand irrefutable proof. One of the researchers shares his impressions. I was intrigued. It was one of the greatest moments in my research. In 1987, secret documents fell into the hands of British researcher Tim Good, and it seemed that they could answer all questions. These papers, marked top secret, contained information about the contacts of the government of the United States with extraterrestrials. The project leaders operated under the code name Majestic 12. The documents were addressed to President Eisenhower and concerned the discovery of aliens in New Mexico in 1947. According to reports, the wreckage was found 120 kilometers northwest of the military airfield in Roswell. The wreckage was unrecognizable, with no wires or familiar equipment found, and among it were the bodies of 4 deceased aliens. News of the crash spread quickly, and the wreckage was transported to several different areas of the country for further analysis. An official explanation of what happened was being developed, and the importance of these documents was beyond doubt. One of the researchers noted, "Never before have I come across material like this. It's dynamite. It's proof of the existence of flying saucers, aliens, and the like." These documents contained information that, firstly, a spacecraft of extraterrestrial origin had visited Earth, and secondly, the government not only knew about it, but had already possessed the wreckage of an alien ship and the cases of the aliens since 1947. However, just 10 minutes after these documents reached the researcher, he concluded that it was a forgery. "I was sure of it," he says. Critics believe that this is a skillfully executed forgery, claiming that President Truman's signatures on the documents were taken from his later authentic letter. Anyone familiar with the basics of forensic examination knows that a person never signs their name exactly the same way, he adds. There is an opinion that the signature on these papers is identical to the signature on another directive. However, the researcher claims, if you use a light table, it will be obvious that they do not match. Now, former proponents of this theory believe that it is a forgery, as the correspondence seems too obvious to them. The decisive argument for me was this signature, he concludes, emphasizing that whoever could have fabricated this document, if it was indeed fabricated, was well acquainted with the matter. Researchers had no doubt that the 12 documents pointed in the right direction. They believed that the information contained in these materials was extremely accurate. To gain access to government documents concerning UFOs, a group went to court. The National Security Agency expressed protest by providing written testimony under oath. The researchers submitted a request for 21 pages of written testimony that had been classified. After the judge added his notes and made a ruling, the documents were handed over. However, a problem arose. When some individuals attempted to erase the redaction, they found that there was nothing underneath. The state believed that citizens did not need to know why this was unnecessary to know. These documents merely confirmed the existence of classified information. The information held by the FBI, which denied its involvement in such research, was only disclosed after the Freedom of Information Act proved their participation. As a result, the Bureau released thousands of documents, including 1,100 pages. The Central Intelligence Agency also denied that it had engaged in this subject. Suddenly, thousands of pages of documents related to UFOs dating back to the 1940s were presented to the researchers. All of this pointed to the existence of a conspiracy of silence. In a private center dedicated to the study of unidentified flying objects, an archive of 100,000 cases was stored, ignored by official science. After 20 years of work in this field, the researcher became convinced of the existence of a mysterious phenomenon that was overlooked by science. This neglect brought nothing good to science, and the documents gathered dust. It was evident that other governments conducted more thorough investigations. In March 1990, in the former Soviet Union, a fighter interceptor took to the air to determine the source of a pulsating light to the northeast of Moscow. For 3 to 5 hours, they pursued a UFO moving at a speed of 4,000 to 5,000 kilometers per hour. The object did not appear on the radars of ground stations. However, thermal imaging proved to be more effective, and the UFO was managed to be photographed. The secret photographs were sent to the commander of the Air Defense Forces. This incident from 1990 became the only one for which there is documentary evidence. All other possible contacts reported by military or civilian aircraft were confirmed only by eyewitness accounts. This was the only case where there was concrete evidence. The pilots did not fire at the UFO. In air defense, there existed unwritten rules according to which weapons should not be used against UFOs. Only radar was utilized, just as in cases with Western stealth aircraft. The pilots never considered that it was an American stealth plane, as this object had different readings on the radar. Stealth aircraft behaved like ordinary planes in terms of speed and maneuverability, while UFOs were significantly different. The dossier described numerous cases. One of the pilots detected lights approaching him, and contact began. The aircraft initiated a steep descent and sustained damage to its left wing upon landing. Since 1977, the Ministry of Defense had received hundreds of similar reports, hoping to exploit extraterrestrial technologies for military purposes. Secret research continued. UFO or smoke from training shots. In the East, UFOs frequently appeared in front of the public. What was it, a UFO or a balloon? The first amateur film shown in the West depicts a UFO over the Parliament building in Vilnius, the capital of Lithuania. The object silently hovers, clearly visible from the ground, and its movement does not resemble that of a conventional helicopter or airplane. At dawn the following morning, the local police filmed it. In 1977, over the city of Petrozavodsk in northwestern Russia, hundreds of people witnessed a gigantic UFO. The initial investigation concluded that it was an optical phenomenon caused by a burning rocket engine from a secret launch of an artificial Earth satellite. However, at the Academy of Sciences of the USSR, it was decided that such an unusual phenomenon required more thorough study. In addition to military investigations, scientists became involved in the study of UFOs, organizing the collection of information across the country for scientific analysis. The Central Committee dedicated to the study of UFOs received data from 10 other scientific institutions. Research focused on two directions, passive and active. In the first case, scientists analyzed reports of UFOs, while in the second, they traveled to observation sites. At one of these locations, where research had been ongoing for 12 years, train passengers witnessed an approaching UFO. According to them, a metallic flying object landed on the ground. Professor of biology Yuri Semyakov noted that constant changes occur in this area. A series of interesting tests and experiments, both physical and biological in nature, had been conducted here. The results showed that living beings avoid such places. According to observations, unusual vortices of energy fields are noted at the landing sites. Over the course of 20 years of research, no living organisms have been found in the soil, not even microbes. Measurements indicated that inside these circles, the flow of time slows down. The most mysterious aspect is that all soil samples taken from the landing site contain tiny spheres. The research led the professor to believe that these spheres may contain DNA of extraterrestrial origin, seeds of life. In the United States, scientists are divided in their opinions. Some believe that the origin of these spheres is unknown, while others think they are products of filtering systems. However, some Russian researchers suggest that these are microtechnologies brought to our planet by cosmic wanderers. Kenneth Arnold's story in the state of Washington pertains to close encounters of the first kind. The object was visible, but nothing more. When a UFO leaves traces, that is already a second kind of contact. Third kind contact occurs when people see the aliens themselves. and in the case of fourth kind contact, there is evidently direct interaction with the extraterrestrials. In November 1980, in the town of Todmorden, England, experienced police officer Alan Godfrey was on a night patrol. He recalls, "I had a night shift from 10 to 6. I decided to check the town hall building. As I turned, I saw this object on the road 500 meters ahead of me. Approaching the object, he realized that it was something he had never seen in Todmorden. At first, he thought it was a balloon that had come down to Earth, but as he got closer, he saw that it looked more like a metallic spacecraft." Godfrey describes, "It was a mechanical structure, and this was not my hallucination. Everything was happening for real." The object was about 6 meters wide and 12 meters tall, with a shape resembling a diamond. The lower half was rotating, while the upper half remained stationary. It had dark windows or panels. If I had gotten out of the car and thrown a brick at them, I might have found out whether those windows were real or not. He also noticed that the trees along the roadside were swaying back and forth, with branches and leaves flying everywhere. However, sitting in the car, he felt no vibrations and heard no noise. Not intending to exit the vehicle, the police officer took his folder, placed it on his lap, and attempted to depict what he had seen. While he was drawing the object, another police car approached him, and at that moment, the object flew away. However, a significant amount of time passed between these events. After a session of regressive hypnosis, the police officer was able to remember more. He described how, in the surrounding darkness, he had a feeling that he was flying somewhere, by himself or together with the car. Upon awakening, he found himself in a room where a tall humanoid, approximately 182 centimeters, very thin, with a beard and dressed in white robes, stood before him. The humanoid suggested that he lie down on the bed, but as the police officer later recalled, its mouth did not move. He simply understood that it wanted him to lie down. This did not cause him any anxiety. Rather, he felt that the humanoid was his friend, and he had the impression that they had met before. He felt safe, lay down on the bed, and then terrible tiny creatures appeared, which had the shape of lampshades and black eyes. There were 7 or 8 of them. Meanwhile, nearby police officers saw a light in the sky. The constable remains convinced that his contact occurred in reality. He wonders, will you choose a natural or anomalous explanation? Do UFOs really land to conduct reconnaissance of the area, or is it an implausible coincidence? He does not know what actually happened. Perhaps it was an earthquake, but he still does not believe that it could have been an earthquake. John Roberts was not the only one shaken by these events. In the mountains, Hugh Edwards also saw a flying saucer. He recalls, "I saw this object fly over the mountain. It was the size of a bus. Yes, it reached the middle, then turned and moved toward the road. As it flew over the road, it tilted, and I thought it was going to crash, but it descended down into the valley and disappeared." Edwards continues, "I have heard a lot about flying saucers, and I thought, yes, that's it." He describes how he heard a hissing sound and was very surprised when he saw the object. In the village of Yandrilo, the district nurse decided that an aviation accident had occurred. She thought that their medical knowledge might be needed to provide first aid. Therefore, she ran to her daughter, and they got into the car to drive to the mountains. After traveling a significant distance, they saw a huge glowing orange sphere sitting on the mountain. Stopping, they peered into what they believed to be a burning airplane, imagining all sorts of horrors. They knew that if it was an aviation disaster, there would be bodies of the deceased, and this did not please them at all. However, they were absolutely unprepared for what they saw. It was a huge orange-red sphere that pulsed, having no flames, but rather simply took on a spherical shape. They also noticed small lights resembling Chinese lanterns that circled around the object, moving in zigzags. At that moment, they assumed that perhaps someone had already come there to figure out the situation. Now they understood that the search party could not have reached that place before they did. No search expedition had approached the mountains that night, and nothing was found at the scene of the incident. However, this case piqued the interest of one astronomer. Under normal circumstances, Ron Mendelssohn could study meteorites only in the sky. However, in this case, he had the opportunity to gather information directly at the scene, both from eyewitnesses and by investigating what he believed occurred as a result of a collision. Assuming that the explosion could have been caused by a collision with a rock, he and his team attempted to calculate the volumes of energy involved in such an explosion. As a result, they determined that this explosion was equivalent to the explosion of 600 tons of dynamite. At the same time, none of the Air Force planes had been reported missing, and no traces were found. Among the testimonies was a strange light phenomenon in the Bala Mountains. The team received letters from remote areas such as Penzance, Northland, and Derby. All of them reported lights whose brightness could be compared to that of the moonlight. These lights moved across the sky at the speed of an airplane, but silently, leaving behind a smoke trail, as if the object was burning or about to crash. A few days later, it became known that the village was located near the geologically active Bala Fault, which has been gradually shifting over thousands of years. That evening, movements were observed in the fault, which was confirmed by geologists. This coincidence became an important element of the investigation. The fireballs in the sky appeared at the same time that geological movements began in the Bala Fault, and this could be the only connecting link. In November 1987, an unexpected visit occurred in Galveston, Florida, on Memorial Day. Eyewitnesses claimed that the size of the UFO was 3 times that of a house. Ed Walters took several Polaroid photographs as a keepsake. This was his first chance in a series of such photo shoots, unsuccessful abductions, and encounters with aliens, which later brought him success in selling 2 books. Among the witnesses were many fraudsters, and Ed Walters became the primary suspect. He did not show his photographs or give interviews to specialists. Galveston became a place designated only for those who believe. Shoreline Park is located on the opposite shore of the bay from the airport, and a route for civilian airplanes passes over it. In this quiet harbor, the appearance of UFOs became big news for the locals. The first publication of UFO photographs from Galveston occurred in November 1987. The journalist responsible for local news was worried about how to present these images. When his colleagues saw the photographs, they also confirmed that they had seen a UFO. This was important, as many other residents of Galveston had also seen a UFO on the night Ed took his pictures, as well as many times afterward. One of the witnesses shares her experience. "I have seen a UFO 3 times during the day and about 100 times at night in Shoreline Park in Galveston. I saw red and white lights in the Galveston area, as well as a silver flying dome. I do not know what it was. I have never seen anything like it before and cannot explain it." Some locals believe that such incidents are nothing more than childish pranks by the military from the naval base in Pensacola. Many military and civilian airplanes fly over this area, and among them, a strange and unusual aircraft could very well be present. The question of whether people can recognize a stealth drone specifically designed for secret surveillance remains open. Such photographs are not difficult to forge if you are an investigative reporter and know how to do it, notes one of the experts. All you need is a foam model and a properly chosen camera. Such photographs are very easy to fake. Ed Walters took his first pictures on a Polaroid 108, in which the film can easily be re-exposed. During the process of taking photographs, one can simply not remove the film and press the button again, obtaining a new image on the same piece of film. For example, at home, one can take a picture of a model of a flying saucer and then go outside and capture the sky. When the film develops, it may contain an unidentified flying object hovering in the sky. What do experts say about the photograph taken by Ed Walters? Research physicist Bruce Maccabee, who works for the government and believes in the existence of UFOs, is the author of numerous scientific papers on this subject. His calculations have convinced him that it is not a hoax. He noted, "I have analyzed all the videos and photographic films taken by Ed Walters, as well as most of the video footage shot by other people in that area. It hovered motionless, and I believe that Ed's photographs and videos are genuine. I have analyzed them quite thoroughly and approached them very critically. But in the end, I was able to refute all the critical statements made against them." In baseball, a player is out of the game after 3 strikes. The first strike against Ed Walters came when a model of a UFO was discovered in the attic of his former home. The second strike appeared when a young man named Tommy Smith claimed he saw Ed staging his UFO photographs. The third strike was awarded after a series of photo experiments were conducted, and they were able to reproduce most of his photographs, including the most complex ones, such as the UFO hovering over the road. If evidence of life on Mars turns out to be true, then life could be widespread and much broader. Astronomers have calculated the number of civilizations we might find in space using the Drake equation. Professor Drake explains the factors that need to be considered. The first factor is the number of star systems in the galaxy. The more stars there are, the higher the probability of finding life. In some of these star systems, there will be planets. This is the second factor. Then we need to take into account the number of planets in each system that could be inhabited by living beings. The next factor is the presence of intelligent beings. Following that is the fraction of systems where intelligent beings have reached a level of technology that can be detected. But how long have they existed? How long can they be detected? Perhaps they were destroyed as a result of a cosmic cataclysm or nuclear war. Perhaps they have reached such a high level of development that they have transitioned to a waste-free production system, not expelling energy into space, and therefore we cannot detect them. There exists a time limit within which a civilization can be discovered. If we raise the rate of production growth and multiply it by this time limit, we will arrive at the number of civilizations that can be detected in space. And this number is growing. Last year, 7 new planets were discovered, one of which, almost as large as Jupiter, is located near Chaina, the 4th star from the Sun, a planet orbiting the star 51 in the constellation Pegasus, and giants around PSR 1257 plus 12. According to the latest data, the number of galaxies is 50 billion. And the number of civilizations we could potentially discover amounts to 100 trillion. It is a pity that our world is on the outskirts of the universe and only a few stars have been able to receive our messages. However, even now we can hear voices from other planets. A special program for the search for extraterrestrial civilizations has been created for this purpose. The first radio search was conducted in 1960 when large radio telescopes began to be erected around the world. The beauty and power of radio astronomy were recognized only shortly before this. Over time, more sensitive radio transmitters were invented. The combined use of these new telescopes and radio transmitters opened new possibilities for research. This became an important breakthrough in the search for extraterrestrial life. The search method assumes that aliens are not too different from us. If they resemble us, we can detect them. However, conducting such searches on Earth is very challenging. We constantly record signals sent by intelligent beings, but all of them originate from ourselves. The question of whether we have ever received messages from other worlds remains open. It is possible that one person, Jerry Amon, indeed received such a message. At Ohio State University, there is a huge radio telescope, the size of which exceeds that of 3 football fields. On the 15th of August, 1977, a signal was recorded coming from the center of the galaxy, pulsating 30 times stronger than the background noise. The transmission lasted for 3 days. Eamon, reviewing the printout, noted a signal that turned out to be stronger than all previous ones. He was so surprised that his hand spontaneously wrote in the margins the exclamation, "Wow!" This did not happen by chance. When the signal is received through only one channel, it may indicate that we are dealing with a unique cosmic phenomenon, or that this signal was sent by a transmitter. Observations of the sky using modern equipment have not allowed for the source of this astonishing signal to be detected again. The team checked their equipment and calculations, eliminating possible influences from computer viruses, stars, space rockets, and ground sources. They ruled out the possibility that it was a spacecraft or satellite in orbit around Earth, as well as anything nearby the radio telescope, such as an airplane flying through the telescope's beam. Nevertheless, they did not dismiss the possibility that the signal was sent by an extraterrestrial civilization. But even if they were able to detect us, could we ever overcome the vast distance in space? Scientists have a few unusual answers, such as wormholes. Imagine that our universe is a balloon. We live in 3 dimensions of this balloon. There may be wormholes within it that connect different points. These wormholes represent a shortcut through the universe. Or imagine that this sheet of paper is our universe. We are at point A and want to get to point B. Under normal conditions, we would have to traverse the distance between these points. However, if we could bend space by folding the universe with another dimension, these points could connect, and we could overcome the distance. At this moment, the answer remains theoretical. We can only send our research stations to the nearest areas of space to gather information, take photographs, and measure atmospheric conditions. Will we thus stumble upon other forms of life? Some people believe that this has already happened. In September 1991, photographs taken from aboard the spacecraft Discovery claimed to show an alien ship evading one of our rockets. This event marked the beginning of the space wars. According to observations, intergalactic invaders, using the curvature of space, instantly changed their course. It is evident that the power is not on our side. However, there is another explanation. At the center of this cosmic battle, there may have been a comet that was at its zenith that night. It was the brightest comet in the last 20 years. How is this comet related to the photograph of the battle in space taken from the spacecraft? The comet is a collection of rocks and ice. When it approaches the sun, ice sublimates and turns into vapor. As a result, energy is released, altering the comet's orbit and making it unpredictable. The space shuttle, when venturing into space, always carries a crew of 5, 6, or 7 people on board. These individuals do the same things as they do on Earth. They breathe, eat, drink, and use the restroom. The spacecraft accumulates all the released water and occasionally ejects it overboard. Once it enters open space, this water turns into ice. What happens to this ice after it is ejected? When the ice comes under the influence of the sun, the sublimation process begins, and tiny ice crystals turn into gas. This is accompanied by the release of energy comparable to the work of a small rocket engine. This resembles what happened with the comet we observed. Thus, it is definitely not a space battle with aliens. Meanwhile, our automatic research station Pioneer is leaving the solar system. What do the ships of extraterrestrial civilizations look like? Perhaps they resemble the meteors spotted in space by a team of observers from Kitt Peak, Arizona. In 1991, they accidentally detected a ship, possibly of extraterrestrial origin, which could have been a reconnaissance spacecraft. Every year, tens of thousands of such ships may fly past us, and we would be lucky if we could notice at least one of them. All we can do is observe, wait, and hope.